Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I welcome you to the show. It's called the Avrum Rosensweig Show, and more specifically today, Parsha Prose with my very dear friend, my colleague, Rabbi Shlomo Gemara. How are you, Rabbi?
Baruch Hashem, thank you very much. Very excited to be here again. And how was your week?
My week was great, and I think the best part of it was going to your house on Friday night and spending it with your lovely wife and your son. I have to tell you, have a beautiful family, and you make just a stunning, stunning Shabbat. I want to thank you for that publicly. I had a wonderful time.
Thank you very much. It was our pleasure, actually, and we would love to see you again, with Hashem.
Yes, and I will be there. And I tell you something that I really loved about your family, Rabbi, is that it's the way you appreciate one another. You know, you really allow each other to be. There's really no imposition of who I think you should be. I'm sure, I mean, that always happens in families. But when I was with you, it was just so delightful that everybody had the space to express their opinion and the space to be who they are. And I felt really, really at home. And, you know, the way I defined it later was, firstly, you're Israelis. So what you want is dugri. You want everything to be, tell me how it is, be authentic. And that was a really, really nice thing. And the second thing was your level of Torah and the holiness that you gave to Shabbat, be it from your wife's wonderful food and the discussion around the table and your beautiful son. It was just such a special Shabbat for me. I felt like I was at home. I really did.
Thank you very much. And as I said in the last time, you know, Shabbos role is exactly that, to make us a family, all Jews together. It's a special thing to go to shul. You know, I met the rabbi. Many people ask me about the Kiddush Club and things like this. And, you know, I don't want to sound radical, but I think that the beauty of Shabbat is that people come together and they can talk to each other and to hear about each other's life. So, you know, when you cut trees, you will have to deal with some flux that run around. But I like to come to shul not only for praying, but really to see my brothers and sisters. And as the same should apply to the Shabbat table and the relationship in the family, you really want to feel the niceness of Shabbat. And, you know, it's very interesting because I spoke to some of the wealthiest people in Toronto who lived in my neighborhood. And they told me their stories when they came to Canada. And usually they came like real paupers, you know, like with no penny in their pocket. I'll give you one example. Sandy Hofstadter, Zichrono Livracha, once told me that he, in order to save the money for shul and for education, he used to walk by foot from St. Clair to Eglinton back and forth. And, you know, Baruch Hashem, he was one of the greatest philanthropists in Toronto, maybe all over the world. But they sacrificed for it. And I asked him, you know, what gave you the power and, like, you know, to stand a new world, new language, new society, very different culture. And he said, no questions about this one, the Shabbat table. You know, when you come together and you sit with your family, you draw so much strength and power that gives you strength for the entire week.
I have to tell you, one of the things that I would say perhaps the thing that I love the most about being with you and your family was singing the Zmirot. And I shared with you some of the Zmirot, the Shabbat songs, Friday night songs, that my father had taught me and my sisters, and his father had taught him. And it was just so beautiful to sing it together with you. We closed our eyes and we went to a very, very special place. I see that you really enjoy singing.
I absolutely do. And what you say resonate very well with me. A few years ago, I went to Shabbaton, and we after the Shabbaton with the students, I asked questions like to see what we can do better, to get some feedback. And I asked one of the students, very thoughtful boy, and I said, "What was the best part of Shabbat?" He said, "Rabbi Gemara, the best part of Shabbat was when I entered the dining room of the Shabbaton, and you and few other people were sitting together, and like you sang the Zmirot with no siddur, and I could see the joy on the faces of everyone. And it was the first time that I understood what Shabbat really means." So, when we did it, we didn't think that we do something so impressive. We all know the Zmirot and we sing them. But for a person who comes from the side,
Yes.
apparently it's quite a stunning experience.
I think you're right. And one of the things that reflected your love of Zemirot, of students, of singing the Shabbatons was 2 weeks ago you were at a Shabbaton, and you said that you started singing around 10:30, quarter to 11, and you didn't finish till after 1 o'clock.
That's right. It was fantastic. It was the best part for Shabbaton for me. It's really inspiring, and it's really, as you said, it's bring the real spirit of Shabbat, the joy of Shabbat. For many people, Shabbat is a bunch of what you do allowed to do and what you are not allowed to do. Shabbat should be viewed in a very, very different way. Even the thing that you are not allowed to do is, in order to create this space of time of 2 hours that you can sing with someone, you know what? You really don't want the cell phone to be there. So you can see it. Oh, you are not allowed to use the cell phone. It's muktzeh. It's whatever it is. No. That's not the idea. The idea is you have to create some time for the joyful things in life, because you will be the same person after seeing another social media. You will be on Instagram, but at the end of the day, you will be the same person in the best case scenario. And our Chachamim and the Torah with its infinite wisdom say, no, you have to create time that nothing is going to distract you. And this was exactly that. The people around the table were not necessarily Shomer Shabbos, but they knew how to sing, they knew the Zmirot, and it was just beautiful time for us.
Rav Shlomo Gamora, the one thing I have to tell you is very important for us to think about this, is that after coming from your house as a single man, I realized how special it was, not only because it was so beautiful in of itself, but also because otherwise I would have been alone. And I've been interviewing a lot of single men lately, authors in the United States and around the world. And I have to tell you something. There's something very lonely about many of them. I'm not excluding single women, because there's a culture within that as well. But I think that people, when they think about inviting people for Shabbat, they should really, really try to find those single guys who are out there, because it can be very lonely and very quiet when you're on your own.
This is something that, I fail to think about, but it's really something very, very important. And, I think you make a very important point for the people with family, and they around the table with their family, they sometimes can forget that there is someone with no Shabbos table and would love to have this company. So thank you for raising this important
Absolutely.
point.
The Rabbi and I like to remind each other that there's opportunities here for sponsorship and advertising. The Rabbi pointed out beautifully last week that if you would like us to wish a refuah shalema, that one should get better soon, or a Shabbat shalom, then please be in touch with us. And you can see our emails at the bottom of the page, and that'll give you the opportunity to let somebody else feel good, or make someone perhaps remove a little bit of their illness by wishing them a refuah shalema, visiting through your words. I want to take this opportunity to thank my sister Chavi, because this week she is indeed sending a shout out. And here's exactly what she told me, Rabbi. She said her son Shruggy, whom you know extremely well because he grew up in your home with your beautiful son and their chevra. It's his birthday today, the 28th of Tevye. And this Shabbat, God willing, is his Parshat Bo. She wants to express her hakor tov, her admiration and her appreciation to you and your wife and your family for helping to raise her son, and to be a role model for him in such a beautiful, gracious way. And I felt so happy too to know that Shruggy spent so much time at your home with you and your family, because as I said, I think you're a marvelous, beautiful family, and I can see that the illumination that he gives off, he's full of light, my nephew, is so beautiful, and so much of it, I believe, came from you and your home.
Thank you very much. First of all, Mazel Tov to Shragi, who really, I don't know one person who doesn't like him, and
He's a beautiful boy.
he's
Yeah.
he's a great person, and he grew up in a beautiful way. Thank a lot to his father, Alav Shalom, and your sister. I can tell you one story. I hope the Shragi will not be upset with me. When I was in Orchaim, our home was next to the yeshiva. And they were a wonderful group of Chevra Shragi, my son Eliashiv, and many others. And one morning, I had the impression that my son maybe did not wake up and come to the yeshiva. And I went home to wake him up, and I throw the blanket from the bed, and I say, Eliashiv, come to the yeshiva. And someone doesn't look like Eliashiv is like staring at me like, what do you want for my life? It was Shragi in his bed. So
It's a great story.
apparently it felt good in our home, and that's how close they were. And they still, the amazing thing, now they are in their mid-30s, they still keep connections with each other on a daily basis. Sometimes when I want to know what's happening with my son, I ask Shragi or one of the friends, hey, what's going on with Eliashiv?
Yeah.
They know before I know.
Yeah, I have that with my son too. Rabbi, tell us, what is a chevra, and what is the beauty of a chevra?
Chevra in Hebrew means like a social circle. But, when you say chevra, means like the people I really close to, the people that I will share my secrets with, the people that I will support when they need, and they will give me the utmost support when I need. So chevra is something of like a word that brings the beauty of friendship and the warmth of friendship.
And as a teacher, as an administrator, vice principal at Chat, the community high here in Toronto, I'm sure that you get to know the students very well. You have 1,400 students, so it's a huge school. But do you also get to know their chevra?
Sometimes, it's a very fine line, because on one hand, you want to know your students. At the same time, as you said in the very beginning, and this is something that characterized me, you have to give them their space. You are not completely one of them. They look for you. They will ask you questions. They will look for your guidance. But at the end of the day, you have to give them the space to live their life. You don't want to invade their privacy and their chevra. So I cannot tell you that I know all the cliques and all the people, but I know some of them, because some of them are creating a chevra around the shul, around tefillot, around other things, and therefore I know them. Many of them, by the way, keep in touch even after they finish high school, this kind of chevra. But I cannot, and I'm very happy about it, that, they have to live their life. And I'm there to guide and to help and to support when needed, but not more than that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the show is called Parsha and Prose. And this week we are discussing Parashat Bo, and we are doing it through the lens of Fiddler on the Roof. Before we do that, we always like to ensconce or dive into Shivim Panim, which is a shmooze, which is what we're doing now about various different things having to do with ourselves, having to do with the Jewish people, the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, and Israel itself. We are very happy that more hostages are coming home to Israel. It's a very complex situation, and many people are extraordinarily happy about it, and there are others who are not so happy about it. But that being said, we want to wish the families well, and that they should only have simchas all the days of their life, because one can only imagine what their children, what their fathers, their sisters, their mothers have gone through. So God bless them.
I just want to correct you, Avrum. I think that every person in Israel is extremely happy about the soldiers and the citizens who are coming back home. There is no question about it. But with it, to the heart, we still remember that a great deal of what happened on October 7th is a result of what happened in Gilad Shalit. So, we have, the eyes shed a tear about the future, what is going to happen, because these people are not going to say Tehillim. These barbarians and terrorists who were released in order to get our boys and girls back. So we have to be afraid about it, but I believe that every person in Israel is extremely, extremely happy for bringing them back to Israel and to their family. And you could see the pictures, it's really like so moving, where parents can hug back their children after almost 500 days in terrible captivity. So when we say that some people are not, it means they are happy about this one, but they raise concern about what is going to be in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that correction. I appreciate it. In Shivim Panim, I think one of the things that we try to do is to show people the beauty of learning and the beauty of our Torah. There is such insight and such wisdom in the things that the Torah expresses, and hopefully the Rabbi and I give that over during Parsha and Prose. I would like to share something that I learned this week in Tractate Sanhedrin 38a, and I enjoy nothing more this chavrusa that Rabbi and I have every week, and putting ideas behind them, putting ideas past them, because we don't plan for this, and I never know what his response is going to be, and 99.9% of the time it's just fascinating to listen to. The reason I say 99.9, Rabbi, is because once you said Avrum, you stumped me, and that made me very happy, by the way. So in Sanhedrin 38a, it says there's three ways that people are different than their neighbors. Rav Meir, and this is from Rav Meir. Rav Meir says like this: how they sound, how they think, how they look. If everyone thought the same way, you would know where your neighbor hid his money. This is a Gemara that says this, because you would have thought through the hiding place the same way as he did next door. If it's the same voice, how he appears would not be a very good thing. Why? Because the wife at night would never know if it's her husband or if it's somebody else. So she shouldn't mix up how he looks and how he sounds. So the Gemara says, and that is why we sound different, we think different, and we look different. Any thoughts on that, Rabbi?
I think it's a fascinating piece of Talmud. Listen, the interesting thing is that you take something very trivial, like, okay, I don't know how many people ever thought about, like, why don't I look like my neighbor? Why we don't think alike? They simply will not even raise the question. And our sages, we think that they just took the texts of the Talmud or the Mishnah and they dug into it to understand better what they mean. The truth is they apply this approach to everything in their life. Everything that they saw, every phenomenon needed to be explained. Even that by itself, great. Because honestly, like, if not this Talmud, I would never ask myself this question. But the Talmud is actually troubled. Well, we all came from one person. Why shouldn't we look the same and speak the same and think the same?
Yes.
And here, Chachamim offer something that is very insightful to tell us how beneficial it is, and things that we sometimes take for granted, how different they could be if, for example, we all would look the same and we will not be able to distinguish one from another. So to me, the greatness of this Gemara is, number one, the question. And many, many times I tell my students, your questions are more important than the answers. Because as long as you ask questions, you are going to get, let's say, even 40%, 50% of the questions answered, and it's going to enrich your life. And don't be afraid if some questions are not going to be answered. But question is a great asset to every human being, number one. Number two is like the original answers. Things that people take for granted requires a reason. And we many, many times are in admiration of Newton that, one apple changed the whole world of physics and understanding the world around us. But Chachamim were quite the same scientists. They took things that are very trivial, very banal, and they said, well, you have to know there is an idea, a divine idea behind it. And, you can accept or not. That's a different story, but there is something beautiful about it.
I think you make a wonderful point. And as they say in Yiddish, I'll bevorn the point. I'll encourage the point. There's a Gemara in Sukkah, is 29:8. It compares the Jewish people to the moon. And a discussion about the moon is very appropriate to this parsha, and we'll tell you why in a few minutes. In fact, throughout our history, we are fortunate to enjoy periods of glory and times of horrific churban. God directed Klal Yisrael to look at the moon and realize that their newfound freedom and power may not last forever. What does the Gemara mean by that? Sometimes you look at the moon and it's full, and you get this incredible feeling of fullness within yourself. And then only a few days later, you see a sliver of the moon. And the moon reminds us not to be too arrogant, to be humble. And Rabbi, when I read this, and this is in sync with what you just said, it answered a question for me, because when I look up at the moon, I'm often wonder to myself, okay, the moon is there. It's been there since I was born. Since I'm a little boy, I've been looking at the moon, and I'm mesmerized by it. But I wondered, from a Jewish Torah perspective, what do you learn from the moon? And when I read this, taking what you could construe as mundane, it became very holy and very beautiful.
Absolutely. Watching the world around us is, I think, actually the prerequisite to be a religious person. There was a great scholar by the name of Chazon Ish who lived about 70, 80 years ago in Eretz Israel. He came from Vilna, and he wrote a very small book that called Emunah Ubitachon, Faith and Trust, namely in God. And in his first chapter, he speaks about the need of every human being to be amazed about his surroundings. He's like, the world must be something of a riddle to him. That's the essence of being a human being, like to ask yourself, okay, what's going on here? Who created it? What is the purpose of me being in this beautiful world? And only then, if you really have this desire to understand what's going on around you, you might be one day a religious person. If you don't ask yourself questions, you will be never a religious person. If you are not looking for answers for your questions, how can you be a religious person? And this is a beautiful story about Abraham, who, exactly like you said, he was mesmerized by the phenomenon of sun and moon and the change. And he asked himself, okay, something must be behind it. And that's how he became the first Jew in the world. So he did not start from the appearance of God to him and told him, Lech Lecha. It was after he became religious. He wanted to some answers to his questions. So he made half the way, and God made his halfway to him, and they met in the way when he told him, okay, your family is going to change the world. You go to Eretz Israel, and the rest is history. But the prerequisite, as I said, for religiosity is the ability to look around and to ask yourself questions.
Rabbi, there was a great movie called Joe versus the Volcano. Do you remember it, with Tom Hanks?
Avrum, when you are doing maybe one day on movies, don't invite me to the podcast.
Okay. Which stuns me, by the way. That stuns me about you. Being that you're so curious, you went to Rome, became a tour guide, you study the history of it. I don't understand how you can't watch movies and documentaries. I don't get it.
You know what? I wish I would have a little bit more time. I don't know. When you go to yeshiva, it's just not part of the medium. I'll be honest with you. Like the only medium to communicate and to learn about the world are books, books, and more books.
Yeah, it's true.
And for some reason, movies did not make their way into the yeshiva world. Maybe because not all movies are kosher, but also books are not kosher. So it's an issue of tradition that is a very good bridge to, Tuvia Cholev, Tuvia the Milch Diker, that is the basis of Fiddler on the Roof. So a lot in our life is about the tradition, thing that we got used
That's
to.
true.
So movies were not really part of my life. Netflix not part of my life. So it might be very, very powerful medium. And here and there, I see things on YouTube that really like, wow, that's amazing. But it's, I don't know, like my DNA built differently, I guess. Movies are not that important. I had a very close friend in town. His name was Moshe Goldstein, who passed away, unfortunately. He was a real thinker, and he always told me, Rabbi Gemara, you must start seeing movies. You must start seeing movies. The best philosophical even things today are dealt in movies and not in books. And unfortunately, I didn't listen to him enough, and I'm still lacking in this area.
All right. So I want. By the way, popcorn is never as great as when you're sitting on a couch, especially with a loved one and watching a great movie. So Joe versus the volcano, and I won't go into the middle. I'll just tell you very short. So the main character and his girlfriend are in the middle of the ocean in a canoe, and they're looking up the stars and the celestial, beings. And she turns to him and she says, she says, my daddy tells me that 95% of the world is asleep, but the 5% that are awake are in a constant state of awe. And a few minutes ago, when you talked about to be religious, is to ask your questions, right? Is to wonder why, is to wonder what, and to really, really embrace creation and why we're here. That struck me, and I always did, that moment in that movie. Some people are in a constant state of awe, Rabbi, and some people are very asleep.
I think that that's one of things that life are doing to us. People have to work, have to sustain their family, and I say it with no criticism in any way.
Yeah.
And you are so into the race that you don't take the time to stand, to look around you, to get amazed by the world. And the word of world in Hebrew is olam.
Yes.
Olam. And the word olam in Hebrew comes from something ne'elam, something which is mysterious. So God gave us the olam, gave us the world, and he gave us a riddle that we have to solve. We have to solve this riddle. But if you never see the riddle, you will never solve it.
Do you think you've solved some of it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that I think yes. I think I found in the world the existence of God. I see the existence of God in I would say every step around me. Maybe not on every second and minute, but I do see God around me. This is a great discovery and great way to solve this riddle. I see eternal values of friendship and family and kindness. But I guess, that we never solve the mystery completely. Maybe when we solve the mystery completely, there is no need for us to be in this world. So it's better not to solve it completely.
Yes, agreed. The show is called Parsha Prose, and I want to give an introduction to the Parsha, as well as Fiddler on the Roof. Just prior to doing that, I want to shout out to my brother-in-law, Jack Levenstein, who lives in Jerusalem, with my sister Etty. Their children are mostly in Israel. They have a son in Houston. And he called me this week, and he was over the top. He was overwhelmed about our show. And he said 100,000 people should be watching. And I said, Jack, just give it a little time. We'll get there. But he was really, really so congratulatory and just so wonderful in his expression of gratitude for what we're doing. And I want to take sort of what Jack did and tell other people, when you like a show, call the people who are doing it. When you read an article in the newspaper that you really, really think is poignant and worthwhile, give the journalist a call. My mother, God bless her soul, she used to do that. By the way, my mother came to me in a dream last night, Rabbi.
Wow.
And I'm going through some hard times with some family issues. And she came over to me and she gave me a hug. And she didn't say anything to me, nothing. She just gave me this beautiful hug. And I saw the divinity in her, and I saw the angelic aspect of, I'm sure, what heaven is. And then she just left. That was it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
That's wonderful, because I am sure 100% that mother continue to hover over the head of their children, even when they are not this world. I have no doubt about it.
Nice thought. Ladies and gentlemen, the Parsha is Parashat Bo. This week we're diving into that Parsha indeed. And it is this powerful Parsha. We witnessed the final stages of the Jewish people's enslavement in Egypt and the climactic moment of the Exodus story. Parshat Bo takes us through the devastating final plagues that God brings upon Egypt, including the infamous death of the firstborn and the institution of the first Passover. As the Israelites prepare to leave Egypt, we also see the foundational moment of Jewish identity as they receive the mitzvot of Passover that will shape the way they remember and celebrate the redemption for generations to come. Today, we'll explore the meaning behind these plagues, the significance of the Passover sacrifice, and how these events speak to us in the present. Stay tuned as we unpack the lessons of Parshat Bo and what it means for us as we move through our own journey of freedom and faith. Fiddler on the Roof. Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most iconic musicals of all time, Fiddler on the Roof. Set in the early 20th century of the Jewish village of Anatekva, this heartwarming yet thought-provoking story centers around Tevye, a poor milkman, and his struggle to hold on to his traditions as his daughters challenged the established ways of life. With one unforgettable song like If I Were a Rich Man and Sunrise, Sunset, Fiddler captures themes of family, of faith, and the balance between tradition and change. The musical also reflects the broader Jewish experience, touching on issues of displacement, resilience, and the constant tension between the old world and the new world. In this episode, we'll explore the cultural impact of Fiddler on the Roof, why it continues to resonate with audience around the world, and what lessons we can still learn from Tevye and his family today. Rabbi, why Parshat Bo through the lens of Fiddler on the Roof?
Okay, so first of all, I owe apology to our listeners that were maybe waiting for discussing the book of Pharaoh. But, when we spoke on Shabbos a little bit, I said, well, this is a little bit too heavy and requires too much prior knowledge to understand how they work, although I highly recommend reading the book. And I thought about something that always touched my heart. And I thought that, many people, I'm sure that many of our listeners, if not all of them, saw Fiddler on the Roof. I had the zchut to see it when I was younger in Israel by the legendary Chaim Topol, which was obviously wonderful. And, the idea of Masoret, that's how I knew it then, tradition, is something which I believe kept us alive, as actually this beautiful Fiddler on the Roof try to highlight the place of tradition in the continuity of the Jewish people. And if you think about Parshat Bo, with all the amazing story that happened, the most important thing is that the Torah told us you have to sit with your family and to tell this story. You have to create a bond with other people when you bring the Pesach Korban, the Paschal sacrifice, and to be with your brother and sister, telling again and again the story. And I don't think that there is any tradition in our wonderful nation, Am Yisrael Chai, like the sitting around the night of the Seder with the four sons. Not all of them are the same. One is Chacham, like a scholar. One is Rasha, he's really rebellious, and the other one doesn't know what's fly around. And the other one really cannot even ask the question, the proper question. And we just discussed this. And this is the worst situation, actually, like that you don't have even any interest to ask a question. So we are very different, but we all still keeping this wonderful Masoret. And think about it, like what kind of tradition kept for almost 4,000 years, and almost in the same way and the same style. And everyone knows what you have to eat and what you are not allowed to eat. Everyone has the wine and the matzah and the korban when Beit HaMikdash was still there. And I think that in a very changing world, like tradition is a key to keep the family together. And the family can be family of 2 and 3, 4 or 5 or a few millions, like the Jewish family.
Rabbi, in light of what you said about seeing Fiddler on the Roof when you were a youngster in Israel, some of the classic productions include a 1964 Broadway production of Fiddler on the Roof, starring Zero Mostel. Also a wonderful, wonderful actor. A 1971 film adaptation directed by Norman Jewison. The film adaptation was released in 71 indeed, and it brought the beloved musical to the big screen. There was a Broadway revival in 1990-91, and 2004-2005 London West End revival. Rabbi, in Parshat Bo, the Israelites must follow specific instructions for the first Passover sacrifice. How does this act of tradition align with Tevye's deep commitment to his Jewish customs, even when they seem to conflict with modern realities?
Tevye repeat again and again the idea that with no tradition, you are going to lose your stand in this world. That's actually the source of the name, Fiddler on the Roof. He compared the lack of tradition to a fiddler standing on a steep roof, trying to play beautifully, but always afraid that he's going to fall from the roof. And there is only one solution to this situation, because Tevye, it goes through the musical or the play, acknowledge the changing of the world. But he's looking for a way to keep things together. And with lots of trust, but also cynicism, he realized that the only way is to continue the traditions of every family to the next generation. So you might give up certain things, if it's for love, if it's for parnasa, if it's for money, whatever the case is. But if you don't have this core traditional way to handle your life, you are done. You are out of the family, the mishpuche. And I think this is a vision exactly that the Torah is giving us here. The Torah knows that Am Yisrael will go through all kinds of phases. People will go all over the world. They will have different experiences, good and bad one. And the Torah gave us this rope to hold that we call tradition, or some people will call it Torah mitzvot, some people will call it minagim. Whatever the case is, this is the rope that we hold strong and still keep it as a lifeline, or at least a rope thrown to us in order to be connected to Klal Yisrael, to the Am Yisrael Chai.
Tevye often struggles with how to navigate change while preserving tradition. How does the Israelites' obedience to God's command in Parshat Bo reflect a similar tension between adhering to the tradition and embracing new circumstances?
So, you spoke before about the moon, and I did not think at all to speak about it. But there is something very interesting here, because this is the first mitzvah, this is the first commandment that Hashem gave the Jewish people before they leave Mitzrayim. And leaving Mitzrayim means not only the freedom from slavery, it means that they take responsibility for their life. And Hashem, with his infinite wisdom, knew they are going to come to Israel. It's going to be a different culture. In his mind, he knew apparently that maybe the Jewish people will have to leave their land, to live among other nations, and so on. And there is something very beautiful about the two astronomical bodies of the sun and the moon, which come together in this mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, of like declaring the first day of the month, which all depends on the moon. But remember that the moon it's a reflection of the light of the sun. And I think this is a very, very strong message that can apply to your question. We need in our life the ability to have a sun which is constant, which is there, which is warming, and sometimes can be very distracting, obviously. We need this stability in our life. At the same time, we have to know that life are not going to keep standing on one place. And this is a moon that every day, every night is changing position. Sometimes good times when it's beautifully shining. Sometimes you barely can see it. These are the dark times. And by keeping the two bodies together, you can really handle very rich and meaningful life. On one hand, you have the Shemesh, you have the sun, with a constant power of values, of traditions, of knowing who you are, but at the same time know how to deal in changing times like the moon. So together, to me, this was like a message, a very powerful message to the Jewish people. Your life are now going to be combined with sun and moon. You are going to have something very fixed like the sun, but you are going to have like changing life, and you will have to work it together, which take us to another famous mitzvah of Ibur Hashanah, where sometimes we use the solar calendar and the lunar calendar. We bring them together to highlight again this idea. Our life is life of sun on one hand, constant values, stability, and at the same time changes and inconsistency.
Rabbi, in Exodus 12:2, it says, "This month shall be for you the head of the months. It shall be for you the first month of the year." Is a mitzvah the same as a halacha? When I looked at this as being a mitzvah, the very first mitzvah to Klal Yisrael, I wondered to myself, why is this a mitzvah? Kibbut Aviyim, I understand it being a mitzvah. It makes a lot of sense. It's a deed. It's a good deed, right? But this is more of an instructional thing. And I would thought maybe more of a halacha than a mitzvah. Am I confusing something?
Mitzvah is the title for a certain act. How to do it is the halacha. So Shabbat by itself is, the mitzvah is, let's say, not to do melacha on Shabbat. The halacha will come and tell you what means melacha, like what you are not allowed to do, what is not considered to be a melacha on Shabbos, a work on Shabbos. So the mitzvah is, I would say, the title of what you allow or what you are required to do and what you are not allowed to do. The halachot is like how to perform it. So the mitzvah is more the objective. This is more like how we get there. I hope I answered this one. But I want to say something very, very important. I love to share it with my students. Listen, we have a general calendar, right? Think about this mitzvah, which really is unbelievable to me. Really unbelievable to me, and seems to be very arrogant. We live in a world of 7 billion people. Most of the world is running according to the general calendar. Today is 28th of January 2025, and I would say that most people in the world will know that I'm talking about today. No, the Jewish people have to have their own calendar, which sounds very arrogant. Like you have here few million people in a world of 7 billion, and they cannot apply their life and their holidays to the general calendar. What a chutzpah is this one?
Yeah.
Yes. But I think that God said, you are special. I know that you are little in numbers. You are not like a few billions of people, but you are going to have your own set of rules and even your special calendar. And it's actually the first mitzvah. So the mitzvah itself, forget about the halacha, just the concept of the Jewish people having their own calendar. I find it quite amazing. I'll tell you a story that as I talk, the first time I came to Canada, we came to Pearson and we were taken to the immigration. So we came to Canada with 7 kids, bli ayin hara. And the guy, the immigration officer asked me, okay, your first son, Nathaniel, when he was born? And I couldn't say because I know that his Hebrew birthday is Yud Benisan, but I did not know anything about like the general one because in Israel, obviously, Yom Huledet is not like on January, it's on Shvat or it's on Teves or whatever it is. And he looks at me and said, you don't know the birthday of your kids? And I felt so embarrassed. And like for him, it was unheard that a father will not know when the birthday. So I said, we have a calendar and we celebrate our birthday in a different way than the rest of the world. And I think like his jaw like dropped down, like what? A different calendar? You never heard about this one. So at the time I was a little bit embarrassed, but now when I think about it, I'm so proud of it. Like, yes, we do have a special calendar. And if you don't like it, it's your problem. But God gave us a special calendar and we should be very proud of it.
That's terrific. And also a subset of that idea is that within our calendar, within how we structure time, that the day starts at night, not in the morning, right? Yeah.
Because the creation started at night. Vayi erev, vayi boker. Like it started with night and then the day was created. There is a famous story that Rabbi Yonatan Avishid, the rabbi of Prague, a very interesting person and a genius. We can spend the whole podcast just to speak about his unbelievable brain. And he used to have, listen, Prague was a very multicultural city. It's not like today that you have 100 different religions in one city, but the Jews and the Christian lived pretty good in Prague, and he was asked by the Bishop of Prague. He was asked, "Listen, I have a question for you. Why Purim? The main mitzvot of Purim are celebrated at daytime, like the Kriyat HaMegillah, the Seuda and everything. You cannot have the Seuda, the big meal of Purim at nighttime. And why is it so? You should have most of the mitzvot as Purim enter, and by you Jews, it starts at nighttime. You should have all the mitzvot celebrated at nighttime and not in the day." So Rabbi Yonatan Avishit, without losing any a second, he said, I have to ask you another question, actually, from my side. Why you, Christian, on Christmas, you celebrate it at nighttime? You have the big mass and you eat your dinner. You actually celebrate days in the day and the night following the day and not the other way around. Why in Christmas it's different? So Rabbi Yonatan Avishitz continued to the answer. He said it's very simple. Like Purim, we celebrate because Haman was a goy. So we, like a goy, we may have all the mitzvot in the daytime. Like Christmas, you celebrate after a Jew. So you celebrate it from nighttime, and the Jews celebrate their holidays.
This is a great story. Rabbi, the idea of Fiddler on the Roof symbolizes balance and precariousness. In what way does the tension between Egypt and freedom in Parshat Bo mirror Tevye's balancing act between his family's desire and his own beliefs?
I think that we always focus on the freedom from Beit Abbadim because this is the most dramatic thing. You know, people who were slaves and they have no ability to conduct their own life are finding themselves in a freedom. It's an unknown situation and sometimes a very difficult one, as we are going to read in Sefer Bamidbar. You know, they were at the end of the day, they were just out of Mitzrayim. They never handled their own life, and to handle your life means lots of responsibility, and responsibility is something that you acquire over time. I think we have to focus on this one too. The change of the physical state from being a slave to be a free man is also a change of consciousness. It's a change of mentality. And the Torah is much more concerned about this change rather than the physical one. You know, even here in America, "Let my people go" was a slogan to free people from their misery, but mostly about their physical misery. In the Bible, it was much more than that. It was the transition to life with meaning, to life with a mission, not just leaving Egypt. This was not the point. And therefore, a few months later, they got the Torah that changed everything and made them like a nation united around ideas. Ideas. And the story of Fiddler on the Roof also focus on this unique moment of transition from being in a certain environment, confined actually by, on one hand, the people around them, but also by their own tradition. The story is about like breaking out, not only from Tsarist Russia, but from the tradition that kept them together. In a way, you can see that also like cuffs on your hands or shackles, and that's why one of his daughters is so excited to go with a goy, which is a terrible tragedy to Tuvia. And I do remember, oh my gosh, I remember that when I saw that Tuvia is sitting Shiva, you know, at least the version I saw in Israel, like when I think it was Hodel, if I'm not mistaken, that wanted to marry the Goy and she left. I was sitting next to my mom and I remember her crying. Like, I never knew that, like, when a person is converting from Judaism to something else, like you see Shiva, and like Shiva to me was after my great grandparents passed away. It was the first time that I understood like the tragedy, and I remember that my mother was crying when she saw this scene. And I think this is a fear, the fear that what is going to happen next. And the Torah actually understands it and try to prepare us and to say, you are going to have ways to deal with it, with the change in your life. Korban Pesach, the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, keeping 7 days a week that keep, you know, every Jewish woman like a little bit crazy with cleaning and making sure that there is no chametz at home. But at the end of the day, you know what? That's what keeps us as a nation.
Rabbi, is your use of the word goy pejorative?
What is pejorative? Sorry.
Is it a is there anything negative in how you use the
No,
word?
not at all. Not at all. You know, not at all. Here in school, we have some non-Jews, and I sometimes, like at the joke, I said, how my guy is doing this morning, and like it's just, you know, to say that we have Jews and non-Jews, and Baruch Hashem, we are very lucky in Canada. I have to tell you, like my relationship with some of the goyim, the people who are non-Jews, are sometimes as good with my own brothers. And I think Goy is also like a tradition of like saying something like, okay, we have people who belong to the Abrahamic family and people outside, but they can be our best friends and we can joke with them and to tell them stories and to support them. Recently, I was in a Shiva house of one of our teachers, And came teachers, Jews and non-Jews, and we all felt like one family. This is something really, really wonderful here. I know that in many centuries, Goy was someone in the outside. Baruch Hashem, I think we are
Past
more
that.
or less over it.
And
Unless a Goy decide to behave like a Goy, namely like the Goy of 500 years ago and to be anti-Semite. But I'm not talking about these guys.
and Shagets and Shiksa, is that okay?
Uh, that's a very complicated story. You see, every society, in order to protect itself, has to build walls. Shegetz or Shikza was one of these walls. But you have to remember, walls are built when there is a real danger. When you have no dangers, you don't need walls. That's why I don't believe that ever, even Donald Trump will build, a wall between Canada and America. Well, we are not enemies. We are actually shares the same values, so you don't need walls. I think what happened, and I hope that it will continue at least with our non-Jewish friends, because I can see that after October 7th, something happened which I cannot deny. We see it with our eyes. Our children in university see it even sharper. Um, but I'm talking about like the decent, nice people who just don't share with us the same nationality or the same Jewish beliefs. Um, the more we feel comfortable, confident on who we are, I think the walls are going a little bit down. To say today a shikta and a sheget, I think it will be inappropriate, to be honest with you. Um, but I can understand why it was very appropriate in the 16th and 17th century. You wanted to make a very clear distinction between them and us. I think that today everything softened a lot, thanks to education. I would say I think that we have many many friends in the non-Jewish community. We have to maintain this relationship. Many of them are wonderful, wonderful people. Um, so using it like shegetz or shiktzeh, it used to be like 200 years ago, as I said, inappropriate.
In Fiddler on the Roof, Tevye's relationship with his daughter highlights generational conflict. How does the challenge of passing down traditions in the face of changing times compare to the Israelites' effort to pass down their identity in Parshat Bo?
As I said, what we see in Lela Seder is something very important. The Seder is not about the person that tells the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. He has to focus on one thing, to tell the story to his children. Why? Because his children are going to live different life than him. Most times, especially in the Jewish tradition, um, you know, no two generations, sequence generation, lived the same life. It was very, very rare. I remember that we had in school, in my previous school, we have a teacher who came from Nova Scotia, from a small village, and she told me that she can track down 13 generations that were, 13 generations, son after father after father after father, um, who came here from England, from Scotland. And I said, why? I don't think that there is any family in the world that can say something like this. We are just moving places from one place to another. And the Torah want to prepare us to it. And the Torah knew that the Jewish people are going to almost on a generational phase, a transition from one generation to another. And again, our sages, when they instituted the four banim, the four sons, which is based on the verses in the Torah, obviously, highlighted this idea. Our sons are not going to be like us, and we have to accept them all as long as they are sitting around the table. The biggest problem is when one of our children is not going to sit around the table. This will be a very sad and most likely a very tragic end of the Masoret. So yes, the Torah is concerned about it, but the Torah gives us also tools in our arsenal to deal with it. And the most important one is to remember where we came from. What is our story? As Rabbi Sachs many times said, we are a nation of storytellers. And I think that a good story that is going down the generation will give lots of power to everyone who listens to the story, no matter what his or her situation is going to be.
Rabbi, the final plague is the death of the oldest child, and the death of the oldest, even when it comes to the behemoths, or when it comes to the animals. You know, as a human being, one who would pick up this story and never have read it, they would be aghast. I'm aghast every time I read this parsha. I am so threatened, really, by this reality that our God would include a makkah, a plague, having to do with death of every single a child in every home throughout Egypt, including pharaohs, including the simple tailor, and of the animals. How does a Jew, how does a person digest the tragedy and what seems like the toxic nature of this plague? How does one deal with this?
That's a very strong question. I mean, it raises many questions about other cases in the Bible that seems to be very violent, very cruel. Um, and remember, God never wanted to use this tool against Pharaoh and Egypt. The hope was that, Pharaoh in the first time actually will say, guys, you can go 3 days to the desert. But here you deal with a nation that believed that they replaced God, a nation that believed that um, no one is allowed to do something which will hurt the interests of Egypt. So God gave them like 9 opportunities to change not their deeds, but this kind of philosophy that there is a higher power who requires just behaving right to every human being. And they didn't want to learn the lesson. Now, you have to remember something. Education works in 2 ways. The same as the Torah gave us a mitzvah to educate our kids to remember the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, and with it to tell the story about how we care about each other, how we have to eat the Korban Pesach with families, not alone, and so on. Education can work in the other way too. And if you want the best proof to it, just see what happened in Gaza last week when people started to come back. I saw the most devastating picture that I saw from the last week are mothers who take their little kids to take a picture on the motorcycle of Hamas guy with, covered his face and sitting on the motorcycle, like waving with a gun. Now, can you imagine, like, you take a boy 3 years old, and I'm not saying that he's to blame, but what kind of culture is this? A culture that the hero is not like a doctor, a scholar, a person who does great things for others, but the hero is the rapist and the killer and the person who is proud for killing families, bearing babies. What kind of society is this one? And you know what? When you educate this way, you cannot expect that the next generation is going to be very different. So I'm not one who say kill all of them. No. But I do say that sometimes God has to use an unusual measure of education. You are not above God. God is stronger than you. And if you refuse to learn the lesson, you will learn it the hardest way. And God will teach you how to educate your children. You are not going to educate them to be cruel, to see slaves as not human beings, that you can treat them the way you want. So I would say this was a very radical behavior of God that usually is just looking for people to change. like he did with Nineveh, and he sent Jonah. But at a certain point, if people don't change, sometimes you have to hit them. Apparently, there is no other choice.
Very often during Parsha and Prose, I'll put a quote by you from the novel of which we're using in to juxtapose the Parsha. In this week, there's some really beautiful quotes in Fiddler on the Roof. If I were a rich man, yada dee da dee da dee da do. That yada dee da dee da do has been used in many, many songs. I remember I once asked Neshama Karlbach if dee 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 die is a lyric. She said, "Oh yeah, of course it's a lyric."
Yeah.
There's a wonderful quote, Rabbi, which is, "God bless and keep the czar far away from us." I thought that was great. Kind of reflects Jewish history a little
Yeah,
bit, no?
there is a story. I don't know if it was true or not. When the Tsar, the one before the last one, was very sick, and he was a very cruel person. When he died, the Russians commanded all people to pray for his recovery. And obviously, the Jews they came to Shul to see that the Jews are keeping their command. And the Jews came and they say Tehillim, but in Tehillim you have one chapter, I cannot remember by heart what it is, but talking about that Hashem should punish all the evil people and kill the king who is like using a injustice. And they davened it with the greatest kavanah. So all the people who came to see if the Jews are fulfilling it, they said, "Wow, we never saw like any ethnic group that is daven with such kavanah." What they daven, they did not understand, but that's a different story.
I think during the Holocaust, there was sort of a similar motif whereby the Jews were commanded to sing, and they would sing songs that spoke to the destruction of their enemies, right?
Yeah, I heard about these stories too.
Rabbi, I have a poem to read to you from Artificial Intelligence.
This time you could just quote some of the songs in the beautiful musical. But you know what? Tradition on one hand. At the same time, we see that Tevye is have to embrace changes. So I'll be this Tevye this time, and I will embrace the changes.
Thank you. It's a bit of a chazaka already. So here we go. In Anatakva, Tevye stands balancing his world in his hands, a fiddler on a roof so high, trying to keep his faith from sky. In Egypt's night, the moon is full, the Israelites the final pull. The plagues have come, but they stand tall, a promise of freedom calls. Tradition, Tevye's voice rings loud, like Moses' plea against the crowd. The blood on doors, a sign of grace. A journey begins and they leave this place. But faith is tested and hearts torn. How can we change and still be reborn? The blood on the door, the law of old, yet the world moves fast, so young and so bold. Tevye says, without our ways, we'd be as lost as night and days, and so the Israelites too must cling to God's command and what it brings. A fiddler plays both soft and strong. Through storms of change we carry on, the past, the future, side by side. In faith we walk and we abide. And as the dawn begins to rise, the Israelites, they've seen the skies. Their chains are gone, their hearts are free. A song of hope, a legacy. I've never had a comment on my poems, not once.
I'm so like struck by them, like I'm speechless.
You're not. So, Rabbi, next
your
week,
poems is the only thing that can make me speechless. Usually like you took me here because like we like to schmooze, but after hearing the AI poems, like whoa, I have no words.
Listen, I interviewed a fellow yesterday. His name's Toronto Mike, and he is really considered the guru of podcasting in Toronto, Ontario, and somewhat Canada. He's done 1,600 podcasts in a decade. And I asked AI for a poem about him. And in the end, he said to me, "Oh, that's awful. It's terrible." Oh, I said, "Mike, why do you say that?" He says, "Avrum, I would rather that you write a garbage poem about me from your heart than that you use a computer to express a thought about who I am." I said, "Okay, good. I hear that,
Okay.
Rabbi, next week we will be together, God willing, again, Parshat Beshalach. And we will be doing that through the lens of Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Just tell us quickly how you brought those two together.
I have no idea.
That's great, man.
I always, the truth is, I had few opportunities to do so. But listen, this is like someone who really make this transformation from a and took at the same time like a great responsibility upon himself, which to me is in the essence of Parshat Beshalach, like leaving Egypt, but still carrying this sense of responsibility to people that you can help and people that you have to thank for. So I think this is one of the greatest novels ever written. It resonates on, I would say, with every person's life and heart. It's just amazing, amazing book. And this one I actually saw the movie, I think. Okay, it's not the book, but it was like very rich and brought the spirit of the book. So I saw that in many ways there are many connections between the two, and we will discuss them next time.
Tell me, in conclusion, do people say that you're funny?
I don't think I'm funny. Sometimes, I have. Sometimes I can be funny. I have, when I look at the world, I think the world is sometimes like make you smile, Yes. You see people, you see all kind of events, you see what you planned and what happened. Yeah, you have to put a smile on your face. So if sometimes it's with a good line, even better. But I don't think I'm funny.
What you're great at is storytelling. You're an excellent storyteller.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you have a whole cadre of stories in your head. And
I don't have the cut. You know what? I just pay attention to things that are happening in my life, because sometimes people ask me like, wow, you have like a story for every situation. I say, no, it's not. I just have situations and I remember them and I reflect on them, and then it turned to be a story. So it's not that I keep the stories, but yeah, I would say, and I would challenge everyone to do the same. Just sometimes stop, think what happened to you from 8 o'clock this morning until 1 o'clock. And I can assure you 100%, that you will find many stories. Can I tell you one?
Yeah, please.
Okay, listen to this. We have now in chat a beautiful tradition, a competition, a basketball competition that we bring many students, boys and girls from all over the world to chat, to play in a beautiful a tournament. And we have many parents who are hosting the people. We have 3 groups from Israel. So one of the groups is Elitzur Petach Tikva. And when I was young, I actually was a player in Elitzur Petach Tikva. When I was like 14, 15, I went there. So I have some connection with them. This morning, someone came to talk to me from one of the people from the groups who came from Israel, and he said, I fell in love with Chat. I love this place. I was here a week. This was like unbelievable experience. Mm-hmm. I would like to consider to be shaliach in Chat. Well, wonderful. They are teachers, and we sometimes look for teachers. So I talked to him, and then I remember to ask his name, and he said his name. I said, this is your father? And he said, no, but it's my uncle. I said, my first year when I taught students, I taught your uncle. Now tell me, how is your grandfather? Because I remember like the business he was involved in. He said, I can't believe it that you remember my grandfather. I said, I do. Now, this was like, came from nowhere. And to me, it's a fascinating story, because I start to appreciate all the people, all my students that I met over time. And now they are like already like parents to people who are 18 years old and 20 years old. And I hope that something that I taught them, they managed to teach others. So here is a story with some wisdom into it.
All right. In conclusion, and I have to ask you this question, then we're going to wrap up. Are you an athlete?
I used to be. I played basketball a lot. I won a second place in long jumping. There is something like this here.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and this is my claim to fame. Unfortunately, I should be an athlete now. It's nice to be when you are 14. It's more important when you are over 60 to keep in shape. So thank you for the question. Maybe next week I will be a little bit more athlete than this week.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you very much for watching and for listening. This has been a fascinating show from my perspective, learning Parshat Bo and about the exodus of the Jewish people. And to remind ourselves what storytelling is throughout history, including the story of Fiddler on the Roof. I think these juxtapositions or these comparisons that we make are fascinating. And as I've said many times throughout the weeks, that it truly helps me to understand the behavior, the humane component of our biblical characters, and also to appreciate what's happening in our day today. And one of the things that I really want to point out to people is that freedom is something that has to be fought for, that has something to be worked towards. And we see it on our day that without a sweat and a real understanding of what our goals are in terms of maintaining and creating even greater freedoms, that it can go away. So be very careful. Fight very hard for our personal freedoms and for our collective freedoms. And Yisrael Chai. Rabbi, any concluding words?
The one who wrote the story about Tevye, I mean, the musical came afterwards, but the Fiddler on the Roof is the brainchild of Sholem Aleichem. We think about the name that the person took as his pseudonym, like the name, the literary name, like Sholem Aleichem, which is like a greeting of one Jew of another. And even this is fascinating. Like before you hold the book, you see who's the writer? Shalom Aleichem. Wow, that's amazing. And you know what they say? The Jews are people that think very differently, are actually very opposite from each other. Because when you give a Shalom Aleichem to a Jew, what does he say back?
Aleichem Shalom.
Aleichem Shalom, which is exactly the opposite. Because if I say to you Shalom Aleichem, you must say Aleichem Shalom.
And you told me on Shabbos, talking about names, you have a cousin or a family member by the name of Adon Olam?
My father, my grandfather from my father's side, had a sister who perished in the Holocaust with her husband, which his family name was Adon Olam. And if someone does not believe me, you can go to the archive of Yad Vashem. You will see the name Adon Olam. This was, I guess, like, the Jews came to the office, they had to pick names, and they asked him, what's your name? And he never thought about it because you didn't need a name. Like, it's like Dos and Dos a Kohen. He was apparently a Kohen. So he said, wait a second, what do I say first thing in the morning? Adon Olam. Okay, should be Adon Olam. That's how it worked. I get that my name Gemara came with the same way, like the surprised first Mr. Gemore or Rabbi Gemara came to the office and they asked him, what's your family name? And he said, I don't know. Wait a second. What do I do all day? Like I learned Gemara. Okay, should be Gemara. Something like this.
Yeah, I think we could do an entire podcast on the names of your families,
Absolutely. I always tell my teachers, my young teacher, I said, a bad teacher can take the most exciting story and to make it boring to no end that students would love to leave the class. A good teacher can take a telephone directory and to make it the most exciting lesson. So one of them challenged me and they say, no, show us like how you make it like an interesting class. So I said, you know what? I will take the challenge. Go and see the names here and tell me what you notice. So I said, for example, how come that you have in this directory, this was in Israel, I said, so many Cohens, so many Levi, what does that teach you about the Jewish people, And they started to speak about it. I said, okay, I proved my point. you can make it very, very interesting.
That's great. That's great. So I want to conclude with a prayer for the hostages. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless, preserve, and protect the captives and missing soldiers of the citizens of Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. May God rescue them from captivity and speedily restore them in peace in the merit of the prayers of this holy congregation who pray for them. May the Holy One, blessed be God, show them mercy, increase their strength, remove their pain, and send them a recovery of body and spirit. May God return them to the bosom of their family swiftly and soon. And let us all say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for watching and for listening. Sei gesinnt, das Vidanya, auf Wiedersehen. We will be with you again next week, God willing, when and hopefully there will be peace in our world. And as we say, Mashiach should come, and we look forward to that. Thank you so much. Be well.